Welcome children, this is Poonam Chaudhary once again, and I'm going to teach you the poem Daffodils by William Wordsworth. Now as always, we should begin, or rather we ought to know something about the poet before we begin the explanation of the poem. So I begin with about the poet. However children, I would request you to take these kind of explanations carefully. You should have your book, your workbook, a copy and something to write on as the explanation goes on. So assuming you have done that, I begin with the explanation. So Daffodils by William Wordsworth. Now about the poet. You need to know that William Wordsworth was one of the greatest romantic poets. He was a lover of nature. He is also called a nature poet. He encouraged the use of everyday language in poetry for the common man, which meant that he made language easy for the common man to understand it. Now we come down to about the poem. Now a few details about the poem. The poem is inspired by a real life experience of the poet. He was on a walk with his sister Dorothy in the woods beyond Go Barrow Park when he came across the sight of the daffodils. Daffodils are flowers that bloom earliest in spring in England. The poem is actually a visualization of the poet from his recollection of the memory of the daffodils. Now children, we go to the poem in detail. I have put it in stanza wise so that it becomes easy for you. In stanza 1, the poet describes himself floating aimlessly like a cloud over valleys and hills. Suddenly, his eyes fall on a number of golden yellow daffodils. The poet refers to daffodils as a crowd and a host. They were located beside the lake and beneath the trees. In the presence of a cool breeze, the beautiful flowers swayed and tossed their heads as if in a dance. The poet was mesmerized by this scene. He carries this scene throughout his life in his heart. We come to stanza 2. The poet compares the numerous daffodils to the stars that twinkle in the Milky Way in the sky. He uses a simile to enhance the beauty of the flowers and their vast numbers to the stars. The daffodils are seen stretching in a limitless, unending line along the margin of the bay. The poet has seen many daffodils at a glance. He mentions an exaggerated number, 10,000, using a hyperbole. The daffodils were tossing and swaying their heads as if partaking in a lively dance. You have the personification of daffodils. Now children, we come to stanza 3. The poet further recalls how the shining waves beside the daffodils danced in the bay. Remember, the daffodils were next to a bay. But the dance of the daffodils outdid or surpassed the dance of the waves in more liveliness and vigor, telling you very clearly that the dance of the daffodils was much better than the dance of the waves. The poet confesses honestly that any poet cannot resist or stop himself from being happy in such a lively company of the golden daffodils. The poet says that at that moment he gazed continuously at the sight of the golden daffodils, not realizing what a treasure or wealth had the sight of the golden daffodils offered to him. We go on to stanza 4. In this stanza, there is a shift in time. Please pay attention. There is a shift in time. The poet shifts from the past to the present. Whenever the poet lies on his couch in a sad or thoughtful mood, the sight or recollection of the golden daffodils flash in his imaginative mind. This sight becomes the bliss of solitude or the happiness when he is alone. The recollection of the scene of the beautiful golden daffodils fills his heart with immense joy, and his heart begins to dance with the daffodils. With this, we come to the themes of the poem, children. There are 2 themes, more than 1 theme, so I've put it down here. First theme, nature, a source of eternal joy. Nature is full of beautiful objects like flowers, mountains, lakes, trees, the sun, etc. The beauty of nature enthralls us by filling us with pleasure. It is a constant source of joy. The second point, nature has healing powers. How? The poet has clearly shown us the restorative and healing powers of nature in the poem itself. If we rely on nature, it is sure to heal the stress and gloom in our mechanical lives. He has shown us through the poem how his vacant and pensive mood was transformed into a happy one when he thought about the beautiful sight of the daffodils. We now come to the title justification, children. The title justification of the poem is the daffodils and is completely justified. What I mean to say here is the title of the poem is the daffodils and it is completely justified as the poem tells us about the beautiful sight of the golden daffodils, which is a source of eternal joy for the poet. Style. We come to the style now. The style of the poem is a lyric because it expresses a single emotion of joy. It is short and musical, and it appeals more to the heart than the mind. Figures of speech used in the poem. We have personification. In order to convey the unity between man and nature, he compares himself to a cloud. He also humanizes the daffodils by referring to them as a crowd and a host. Now the simile is used. The poet uses a simile by comparing his aimless wandering to a cloud that wanders over valleys and hills. He compares the beauty and the infinite number of daffodils to the stars in the Milky Way. Coming to the structure of the poem. The structure of the poem is as follows. The poem is divided into 4 stanzas, each having 6 lines, and the rhyme scheme is as follows: A, B, C, C. Now the use of alliteration. It can be found in the line beside the lake, beneath the trees. The B sounds, and the dances with the daffodils, that is the D sounds. Now coming to the use of hyperbole. 10,000 I saw at a glance. Here the poet uses an exaggerated statement, which means many daffodils, which is not an exact count, hence the use of hyperbole. Similarly, never-ending line, which is an exaggerated overstatement. With this, we come to the end of the explanation, children. To understand it completely, it would be wise on your part to read the poem in detail and refer to the discussion, after which I don't think you should be having a problem. So until then, stay safe, stay healthy. Thank you and bye.